What is the absolute worst nightmare for a new parent? How about having your 18-month-old trapped 22 feet below the ground in an 8-inch well? You run outside. Your heart is racing. Panic sets in. This is the dark reality that the Morales family faced in October of 1987. Nothing could prepare them for the next 58 hours. This is a chilling breakdown of how it all unfolded. Texas, October 14, 1987. The McClure family resided in the modest town of Midland. Sissy and Chip were young parents at the age of 18. Their beautiful baby girl, Jessica, loved watching Winnie the Pooh. She was an adventurous toddler, constantly keeping her parents on their toes. Sissy and the baby often spent time at her sister Jamie's house. Sissy would often help out Jamie at her in-home daycare while Chip was at work. This allowed for Jessica to play with the other kids. Horror struck on October 14th. Sissy was keeping an eye on the kids in the backyard. The phone rang from inside the house. Sissy stepped away to answer it, as there were no cell phones back then. She heard the panic of the screams coming from the backyard. She dropped the phone and ran outside. Sissy found all the children gathered around. She pushed past them and her heart sank. "Where's Jessica?" Panic gripped her. The children said nothing. She looked around. "Where's Jessica?" Anxiety mounted. The children gestured to the well. An opening to the well with a diameter of 20 centimeters. The hole was barely big enough for baby Jessica. Peering down, Sissy spotted her daughter trapped below. Despite her attempts to reach Jessica, the distance was too great to pull her up. And even if she could, there was no guarantee that Jessica could fit back through the narrow opening. Frantically, Sissy dialed 911, pleading for help to rescue her daughter. The agonizing waits of the emergency responders felt like an eternity. Sissy explained that they had covered the well with a large rock to prevent accidents. And she never imagined this scenario. The cops arrived and attempted to communicate with Jessica. Nothing. They tried again. Still nothing. Then a faint cry. Sissy feared her daughter was slowly descending the 22-foot shaft. As first responders arrived at the scene, they knew they had to act quick. They devised a plan to rescue Jessica before she fell any further. News of the incident had spread throughout the town. It was a tight-knit community, and everyone wanted to help in any way that they could. The police set up a barricade to keep people off the scene. Many harbored doubts about the outcome, as similar cases rarely ended well. A similar incident happened 5 years earlier. It involved a young boy named Alfredo. It didn't end well. For the rescuers tasked with saving 18-month-old Jessica McClure, the situation was urgent. Each passing moment brought her closer to the potential tragic outcome. In the suburban yard, a crowd gathered around the tiny well. Among them were police, first responders, volunteers, and media personnel, all hoping for a straightforward solution to the dilemma. However, the situation was far from simple. The well was 80 feet deep, narrowed to 4 inches at 22 feet deep. They hoped this would stop her from descending any further. What if it didn't, though? What if the pressure squeezed her into the 4 inches? Time was working against them. Their plan involved drilling a parallel well, a hole about 5 to 7 feet away from the original. Machinery was brought in for the purpose. The machines were loud. They shook the earth. Every time they turned them on, baby Jessica would cry and scream. Despite the challenges, they persisted. They used a large rat hole drilling rig. Every once in a while, they would halt the drilling to ensure Jessica's safety and well-being. They would yell down to baby Jessica, waiting for a response. Sissy and Chip were right there by the well, trying their best to calm the little girl. Sometimes they couldn't hear baby Jessica at all, so they would pause the drilling altogether. They hoped she was just napping. They would yell out for 20 minutes with no response. They had to move on with the drilling. They were wasting precious time. 30 minutes later, they stopped the drilling for a second and could hear a little Jessica singing. They were overjoyed. A detective stationed next to the well listened for signs of Jessica stirring or expressing fear. They tried to uplift her spirits. They would sing Winnie the Pooh to her. That was her favorite song. Eventually, they successfully drilled a 30-inch wide and 29-foot deep hole directly across from Jessica's location. This allowed them to descend without risking any harm of her, as they drilled 2 feet deeper than her presumed position. The media coverage from the rescue operation quickly escalated. It went from statewide to nationwide, with CNN providing continuous coverage. This was a rarity in 1987. The nation was gripped by baby Jessica's plight, with widespread media coverage reminiscent of the Challenger space shuttle disaster from previous years. Jessica became a symbol of the collective concern, earning the endearing title, Everyone's Baby. As rescuers worked tirelessly to drill a hole parallel to Jessica's well, they also ensured a continuous supply of oxygen for her safety. Drilling sideways posed unforeseen challenges that Charles Buller described as one of the toughest tasks he'd ever encountered. Yet the sound of Jessica crying spurred him on, serving as a reminder of his own child's vulnerability. Despite the relentless efforts of the rescuers, Sissy and Chip felt the agonizing passage of time, with the days bleeding into nights as they anxiously awaited their daughter's rescue. Viewers across the country expressed their support for the McClure family, sending flowers, toys, cards, and donations. Despite the outpouring of generosity, concerns mounted as Jessica spent 48 hours trapped in the well, dirty and frightened. Medical advice cautioned against sending food and water down to her, due to the risk of exacerbating any medical injuries. After 58 hours, rescuer Robert O'Donnell emerged from the well, cradling Jessica in his arms. The tension and anticipation among the onlookers was palpable, captured in the emotional reactions of those witnessing the rescue unfold. Finally, as Jessica emerged from the well, blinking in the daylight, the crowd erupted into joyous cheers and tears of relief. It was a moment of triumph and gratitude for the bravery and resilience of the little girl who had endured the darkness and isolation for 2.5 days. Jessica was discovered wrapped in a spine board, her head bandaged, body covered in cuts, bruises, dried blood, and despite her condition, she was alive. Rushed to the hospital in an awaiting ambulance, Jessica's survival was deemed miraculous. Although she didn't suffer a broken neck or spine, her leg had been above her head during the ordeal, causing gangrene in her foot. Doctors managed to save her foot with skin grafts, though she lost the small toe. Additionally, she had a prominent scar on her face from her hairline to the bridge of her nose and was diagnosed with chronic rheumatoid arthritis. Major TV networks interrupted regular programming to broadcast the rescue to the world, underscoring the significance of her survival. The broadcast of Jessica's rescue drew unprecedented viewership, yet the McClure family remained unaware of the media frenzy, as the rescuers had cut off electricity to their home during the rescue. Upon learning Jessica's newfound fame at the hospital, they were overwhelmed, the support pouring in from across the country. Jessica underwent 15 surgeries over the next following years, funded by generous donations. The family established a trust for her. Despite the overwhelming attention, both the McClure family and the rescuers faced difficulties adjusting into the newfound prominence, with some experiencing a sense of emptiness after the adrenaline-filled rescue. The heroes of Jessica's rescue struggled to return to their normal life after the spotlight faded. Jamie Morris, Sissy's sister and homeowner where the incident occurred, moved away due to the overwhelming visitors. A memorial now covers the well. Chip and Sissy divorced 2 years later, facing tabloid scrutiny. Chip managed a restaurant and remarried, while Sissy emphasized Jessica's normalcy. As the story unfolds, it's quite evident that sometimes tragedy strikes when you least expect it. The rescue of Jessica McClure is one of faith, determination, and hope. Imagine being sucked into a 30-inch pipe under a cyclone of rushing water. Complete darkness without any understanding of what's happening. Holding your breath with certainty that you would drown in just moments. Then suddenly, it all stops. You breathe in. The fumes of crude oil burn your eyes and lungs. This was the reality for these 5 men, sucked into the pipeline that day. Would any live to tell what happened? A GoPro video camera attached to one of the divers' suits recorded the video and audio recounts the terrifying tale. This is the chilling breakdown of the Pariah diving disaster. On February 25th, 2022, at Point of Piers Berth 6 platform, a team comprising of LMCS members Faisal Kurban, Kazim Ali Jr., Rashi Nagasar, Yusuf Henry, and Christopher Boudram undertook the maintenance duties on a disused pipeline. The pipeline was the property of the Pariah Fuel Company, a state-owned entity situated in Trinidad and Tobago. The pipeline under consideration was a 30-inch U-shaped conduit that traversed the seabed, engineered to convey oil from Berth 6, where vessels discharged their cargo, to Berth 5, housing the refinery. Despite the inherent risk, the team of the 5 divers from LMCS was seasoned and adequately equipped for the task, utilizing a diving bell, a specialized habitat resembling an 8-foot cube. The team installed an air tube within the structure, affording them a dry shelter workplace for maintenance operations. LMCS strategically positioned the cube structure over the pipeline at Berth 6 to displace the water within the designated work zone. This cube effectively generated a pocket of pressured air, displacing ocean water to establish a suitable workplace. Once prepared, this workplace enabled the team to shed their diving gear and utilize their tools safely for essential tasks. Having executed similar procedures numerous times, the experienced crew proceeded with their duties, seemingly in a routine fashion. However, this semblance of normalcy was abruptly shattered. No one could have predicted next bizarre events that would change the course of their lives forever. 2 weeks prior, the company had installed an inflatable plug to safeguard the pipeline's oil and prevent contamination. Despite the line being inactive at the time, it had the capability of being activated as necessary. In industry terms, this setup was known as a dead leg, a practice not devoid of risk. While such precautions are standard, they demand meticulous planning. This was not the case that day. The divers didn't take the proper precautions that day, a mistake they wouldn't live to regret. It had been assumed that the pipe would be full of crude oil. However, that was not the case. There was an air pocket that they did not expect. Why would an air pocket matter? As it transpires, inflatable plugs like the one that was in place operate under pressure, effectively containing the high-pressure air within the diving bell and the low-pressure air within the pipe. Unfortunately, this setup laid the groundwork for a catastrophe. When Ollie Jr. passed a wrench to his colleagues inside the diving bell to loosen the valve and release the plug, it set off a chain reaction that would take their lives. Upon the plug's release, the drastic pressure differential transformed the interior of the pipe into an unrelenting vortex, mercilessly drawing air, water, and the divers into the black hole of despair. The suction force proved overwhelming as a powerful surge of water filled the diving bell. The intense pressure differential unleashed was an unstoppable force that dragged the men and their equipment into the narrow confines of the pipeline. In an instant, they were thrust into water and oil coffined 120 feet underwater. The struggle for survival unfolding in a 90-second ordeal, desperately gasping for precious oxygen amidst the chaos. This happened so fast that the divers had no time to react or to save themselves. The sole survivor of the accident recounts what had happened, and he says that the only thing he could remember was curling into a fetal position and then finding himself inside the pipe. Had the inflatable plug been functioning as intended, it would have served to isolate 1,200 barrels of oil from the surrounding air in the ocean water, rendering the task of removing the plug and proceeding with their work. Within the habitat, air pressure would have exerted a downward force of a substantial column of oil, with the oil settling to a stable level between the openings of Berth 5 and Berth 6. Nothing beyond the ordinary. Unfortunately, the divers were unaware that beneath the plug lay a column of air, resulting in significantly less oil within the pipeline's length. Their journey through the pipeline came to an abrupt halt. Collecting themselves, they took stock of their surroundings. They found themselves settled within the line, where the violent whirlpool had left an air pocket, providing them with a means to breathe. The oil-filled air burned their eyes and throats. Their ordeal had just begun. Trapped inside a 1,200-foot-long oil pipe, they were disoriented, injured, and gripping by sheer terror. Amidst the chaos of fear, the men attempted to communicate and bolster each other's spirits. Yet the harsh reality of their situation swiftly overcame them. The GoPro camera documented every harrowing moment of the ordeal, capturing the raw terror and sounds of the struggle as they fought desperately for survival initially. Chris believed they had been propelled headfirst through the pipeline, prompting them to crawl backward in an attempt to escape. However, Qasim, Yusef, and Faisal were convinced that they had entered feet first. Trusting the consensus, Chris, as the least injured, positioned his feet on Qasim's shoulders. Linked together as a chain, with Chris leading the way, they commenced in their arduous journey out of the pipe. Navigating through the thick, slippery oil, residue in pitch-black darkness proved to be excruciatingly challenging. Battling broken bones, burning eyes, sore throats, and extreme discomfort, they pressed on with extremely slow progress, with no end in sight. Despite their dire circumstances, the men persisted, offering prayers and exerting themselves to the best of their abilities. Their perseverance led them to stumble upon 2 oxygen tanks, with regulators still attached. Chris, recognizing the potential risks of breathing the air within the pipeline, cautioned his companions against inhaling it excessively, advising them to take small, intermittent breaths from the tanks to maintain clear oxygen levels in their systems. As they continued their journey, calamity struck. Water levels were gradually rising. Chris observed that some members of the group had struggled to breathe and sustained injuries, while others found themselves obstructed and unable to move forward. Concerned about rising water levels, Chris decided to investigate further, only to make the horrifying discovery: the next segment of the pipeline lay entirely submerged. With only 2 oxygen tanks for 5 individuals, proceeding further posed a significant risk to their safety. Aware that attempting to traverse the submerged section together could lead to panic and potential tragedy, Chris grappled with the toughest decision of his life. He realized that he had to continue alone to seek help for everyone. Mentally preparing himself, Chris resolved to break the news to the others. After conveying the gravity of the situation to his companions, they reluctantly agreed it was their only chance of survival. They entrusted Chris with one of the oxygen tanks, understanding that he would seek help in return to them. Navigating the submerged section with uncertainty about their direction and the remaining air supply, Chris swam forward with the tank leading the way, hoping to encounter another air pocket soon. The entire length of the pipe contained flooded sections, some of which harbored precious air pockets. Struggling through the submerged passages, Chris realized that his oxygen was depleting rapidly. With his diving instincts on high alert, he drew the last breath from his tank. Just as desperation loomed, fate intervened and his tank collided with another metal object ahead, a second oxygen tank. Hastily, he searched for the new tank's regulator in the pitch-black darkness. After a frantic search, he located it, but to his dismay, the regulator lacked the mouthpiece. Undeterred, he shoved the entire apparatus into his mouth. Chris pushed on forward with all of his strength, aware of the uncertain length of time that he could survive. Concern for his trapped companions weighed heavily on his mind, and he struggled through the pipeline. Encountering another air pocket, he realized that his only escape route was to return to the riser. Despite exhaustion, burning eyes, and dwindling air supply, he pressed on through the slick, oily pipeline. Continuing his journey, Chris reached a critical junction, determining whether the riser led to berth 5 or berth 6. If he chose wrong, he knew that he would reach a dead end. With resolve, he made this choice to push on forward, determined to save the crew. He pushed up, and with relief, he found that he had chosen correctly. He called for help. Finally, someone heard him. They assumed that they were all dead because they had been gone for so long. The LMCS rescue divers attempted to locate the trapped men by knocking on the pipeline, eliciting hopeful responses. However, despite their efforts, a viable rescue plan remained elusive. As time passed, the 4 injured divers endured worsening conditions, including injuries, diminishing air, and suffocating from oil fumes. Despite the initial hopes of the rescue by the Pariah Trading Company, the LMCS, days later, the company recovered the bodies of the 4 remaining divers. Initial autopsies determined their time of death. Discrepancies arose, a situation no one could have predicted, claiming the lives of 4 people who thought that they would make it home to see their families. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Picture being 240 feet underground in a coal mine in central PA. While drilling into the wall of rock, you hear a sound you've never heard before, but instantly, you know exactly what it is. You have just seconds before a tidal wave of epic proportions rushes in. This is the breakdown of the Creek mining disaster. On July 24, 2002, a group of miners arrived at the Creek mine in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. The Creek mine was only 2 years old and stretches over 2.5 kilometers or 8,000 feet underground. It was owned by Black Wolf Coal Company. It is one of the 9 mines in Somerset County and produces over 2 million tons of coal a year. Little did they know the disaster that was about to take place. Somerset County has been at the forefront of coal mining for decades. At this time, terrain mapping was not as advanced as it is today. The team had to rely on old maps of the area and work with estimations. Due to the large number of mines in the area, some were not marked properly. This little error would have grave repercussions. Research showed that the Creek mine was neighbored by Saxman coal mine. Saxman had been abandoned nearly 40 years earlier, and 250 million liters of water had gathered over that time. The team was not worried as the distance between Creek and Saxman should have been 300 feet. Regulations stated that mines had to be 200 feet apart. This was a safe bet. Little did anyone know of the horrors awaiting them ahead. As usual, 18 miners reported for duty. They saw from the roster where they would be working. After chatting and gearing up, 18 miners got into carriers. These would transport them 240 feet into the ground. The deeper they went, the darker it became. It was a 40-minute drive to the shafts. The shaft is made up of a series of tunnels. 100 pounds in, the shaft split into 2, same as the miners. 9 of them proceeded down in the 2 left panel, while the other 9 went up to the 1 left panel. Work commenced, and each team started mining coal. According to the maps, there should have been around 91 miles of coal separating the mines. There was an extended portion of the Saxman mine that was undocumented. Speculations are that this part was mined in the last months before Saxman was abandoned. However, this little portion meant that Saxman mine was only a couple of meters away. If they got too close, a wall of water would explode through. At around 9 p.m. on Wednesday, July 24, 2002, miners in 1 left panel were working. Suddenly, one of them heard a thundering sound. Water breached the tunnel, and it rushed inside Creek mine with a thunderous boom. Luckily, the miners in the 1 left panel held on to several chambers around the tunnels. They could only watch as torrents of water rushed in. The over 250 million liters of stagnant water came rushing into the mine, flooding the tunnels. Fast, 1 left miners realized that the water was heading toward the deepest part of the mine. This is the 2 left panel. The miners used a telephone to warn the 2 left panel miners of the impending danger. The miners in 2 left responded to the message instantly. They jumped on their carriers to rush all the way back to the mine's entrance. However, they found that water had already reached the intersection. This meant that their way out was blocked. As luck might have it, the men remembered that there was a ventilation shaft. It was not yet flooded, so they crawled the remaining kilometer out. They managed to get out of the mine in time. Their joy was short-lived, as they realized that the other 9 miners were still trapped inside the mine, trapped in a mine shaft that was rapidly filling with water. Rescue plans started being made, with time being of the essence. Deep below, the 9 miners could see the water rising. With it, their hope of getting rescued dwindled. It was determined that the first thing to do was to check whether this would be a rescue or a recovery mission. The first step in the mine rescue was to get air to the trapped miners. Bob Long worked as an engineer technician for Civil Mining Environmental Engineering. He helped with this. They used GPS to measure. They needed the exact location of the miners. They started drilling a 6.5-inch wide hole at 2 a.m. The goal was to pump air into the part of the mine where the miners were thought to be. A team of 4 began drilling at 3:15 a.m. By cracking through 240 feet of rock, they reached the mine shaft just 1 hour and 45 minutes later. Finally, at 5:06 a.m. on July 25, after 8 hours of work, the hole reached the mine. The air compressor pushed air inside, and tests showed that the air quality was okay. Rescue workers then tapped on the pipe, hoping for a response. The miners had huddled together to conserve body heat. Due to the rising water levels, the air in the mine was diminishing. There was a chance that the miners could suffocate. The miners knew that they were in a dangerous situation. They decided to build a barrier, hoping that it would keep the water away. The barrier was made of stone slabs. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from somewhere. The drill broke through, bringing in a fresh burst of air. This was quite a relief to the miners, as breathing was much easier. Above ground, one of the rescue team members heard some tapping coming from the mine. All the machinery in the area was shut off. This helped the rescue team receive 3 strong bangs in response at 5:12 a.m. Later, at 11:40 a.m., they got 9 taps back. There was cheer going around as the rescue team became hopeful. However, this hope quickly melted away. Reality sank in, and the rescue team struggled with an impossible decision. Unless something was done fast, the men would lose their lives, either to drowning or suffocation. On a positive note, the miners' exact position was known so rescue efforts could begin. They had to drill a hole large enough to fit in the rescue capsule. Despite there being so many drills in the area, none was big enough for the task. At this time, Pennsylvania State Police were guarding the site. They had informed the miners' families of the situation and would be giving updates soon. News reporters also stormed the area, giving the story worldwide attention. While that was happening, calls were being made all over the world. The hope was to find a drill that could raise the trapped men from the mine. Fortunately, a drill was found in Clarksburg, West Virginia. The owners were more than happy to help. The drill was escorted to Quick Creek Mine by police vehicles. It was estimated that the water levels were rising by 7 meters every hour. By Thursday morning, the water had reached the entrances, completely covering them. The rescue teams decided to turn on the drilling compressor, as this would provide fresh air to the men. As this was happening, other rescue teams were battling the water flooding the mine. They relentlessly pumped out water, even though they did not see any fruits of their efforts. In the mine shaft, the miners continued retreating further back, as water continued to fill in. They believed that they had an hour left to live. The miners found a bucket floating away and grabbed it. They started writing farewell letters to their families. They all believed that they would never get out of the mine alive. The super drill had arrived and started drilling Rescue Shaft 1. The miners could hear it, and they knew that something was been done to help them. On Friday, at 1:50 p.m., disaster struck. The drill stopped. The drill had reached 105 feet when a drill bit broke. A piece of the drill bit got stuck in the hole, so a special tool had to be made to get it out. Normally, this would take several days. Luckily, a large machine shop in Big Run, Jefferson County, managed to make the tool in just 3 hours. A National Guard helicopter brought the tool. The bit was finally retrieved from rescue hole number 1 at 4:09 p.m. on July 26th. The drilling equipment problem caused an 18-hour delay. The miners were worried, but Foley, one of the rescue team, said they would start drilling again soon. The miners' families were briefed about the rescue efforts when they visited the mine. Governor Mark Schweiker visited the site that night. He said they were doing everything possible to save the miners. People from all over the world reached out with calls, emails, and prayers to support the rescue. At this point, there were 2 big worries. First, if the miners were rescued too quickly, water might rush in and drown them. Second, there was a risk of the miners getting sick. This was because the air pressure underground would be different from the surface. This is called decompression sickness. To get ready for these dangers, they made an airlock for the top of the escape shaft. Also, they brought in 10 portable chambers to help treat any sickness. Drilling went on until 1:38 p.m. on July 27th. Then they stopped to put in the airlock and lower the water level around the mine shaft. Drilling started again at 4:45 p.m., but at 8:11 p.m., there was a problem with the airlock, so they had to fix it. They finished repairing it at 8:58 p.m. and resumed drilling. By 10 p.m., the water level was at 1827.92 MSL. The drill finally broke through into the mine at 10:16 p.m. at a depth of 239.6 feet, which was lower than the mine's entrance. They were also drilling a second hole, just in case. By 7 a.m. on July 27th, it was 160 feet deep, but at 1:31 p.m., the drill broke at around 204 feet deep. They were fixing it when the first hole broke through, so they stopped drilling. After the rescue hole broke through into the mine, rescuers tapped on the drill steel with a hammer. They heard a faint response from the trapped miners. The miners took turns walking down the passageway every 10 or 15 minutes. This was to check where the drilling sounds were coming from. When Halleman and Foy made the trip on Saturday around 10:15 p.m., they found the drill opening and alerted the others. Right after the hole broke through, they shut down all equipment to check the air pressure. The pressure was the same inside and outside the mine, so they didn't need the airlock. They removed the drill steels and lowered a communication device into the hole. They confirmed that all 9 miners were alive, although the foreman had chest pains. The men had endured 7 hours in the mine. At 12:30 a.m. on July 28th, a steel mesh escape capsule was lowered into the hole. Foreman Randy Fogel was the first to be rescued, around 1 a.m. The other miners were brought up one by one, based on weight. By 2:45 a.m., all 9 miners were safely on the surface. These included Harry Blaine Mayhew, Jr., Thomas Tucker Foy, John Unger, John Philippi, Ron Heilman, Dennis J. Hall, Robert Pugh, Jr., and Mark Papernak. Fortunately, none of the miners got sick from the pressure change. They were taken to hospitals either by helicopter or ambulance. However, as they came out of the mine, they were soaked in cold water from an aquifer the drill shaft had gone through. The rescue team and all those at the site will never forget this incident. This is a time when a disaster became a miracle. The 9 people who were saved that day, a testament to what unity can achieve. A monument was erected in their honor. A portion of the dairy farmland was preserved. It is used as a park to celebrate the 18 lives saved. Imagine being miles underground, surrounded by razor-sharp rocks, tight, narrow passageways, climbing down steep canyons, and with one false move, a boulder crashes down and crushes your leg. Stuck with over a 4-day journey to the surface and no guarantee of rescue. This was Emily Davis Mobley's reality in the depths of Cave Lechuguilla. In the dusty deserts of New Mexico, there's a giant underground maze called Lechuguilla Cave. Lechuguilla is the nation's deepest cavern, stretching nearly 57 miles wide and so deep that if you stacked 10 houses on top of each other, it would still be deeper. Emily Davis was an explorer who decided to solve the puzzle of this cave. Lechuguilla is a marvel of the natural world, a sprawling underground network that has captivated explorers since its discovery in 1986. Known for its vast chambers, intricate mineral formations, and pristine ecosystem, Lechuguilla offers a glimpse into the untouched beauty that lies beneath the Earth's surface. But with its beauty comes an inherent danger. Narrow passageways, sudden drops, and fragile rock formations make it a place where the most skilled cavers caution to venture. Emily Davis lived in New York, with a spirit as indomitable as the cave she sought to explore. At age 40, Emily was no stranger to the challenges of caving. Her experience and knowledge of the subterranean world had brought her to this moment, ready to embark on a survey mission with her team, driven to uncover the unexplored cavern. The mission was clear: survey a new section of Lechuguilla Cave, a task that Emily and her 4 companions approached with the reverence of a seasoned caver. The equipment checked and rechecked, understanding that one misstep would lead to almost certain demise. In the realm of exploration, the line between safety and peril is razor thin. This was no routine expedition. They were elite cavers and expected to face certain struggle. However, their worst nightmare came true. While scaling down a pitch, Emily reached for a boulder. As they ventured deeper into Lechuguilla, mapping out a new section of this magnificent cave, the unforgiving nature of the quest became abruptly apparent. The cave, for all its beauty, does not forgive mistakes easily. The boulder broke loose, crushing Emily and injuring her leg severely. She screamed in pain. Panic set in. The team faced with a devastating reality. In that moment, their mission for discovery had turned into a struggle for survival. The impact was immediate and severe. Emily, struck by a falling boulder, found herself in excruciating pain, her left leg grotesquely injured. In the dim light of their headlamps, her team members quickly assessed the situation, their minds shifting from exploration to emergency response. The cave, for all its silent beauty, had become an unforgiving adversary. With no way to call for help from the surface, the team realized the gravity of the predicament. 90-degree temperatures, 100% humidity, and miles of narrow, twisting passages lay between them and the outside world. Each step they had taken into the depths now represented a barrier to their return. The cave, a place of wonder and discovery, had become a labyrinth of survival. One of the cavers went ahead and brought word of the accident to the surface. A rescue operation of unprecedented scale began to take shape. The caving community, bound by their shared understanding of the fatal risks, rallied together. The mission was clear: bring Emily home. But the rescue difficulty would be unlike any other in history. Lechuguilla Cave is a giant among caves. Its passages a test of human determination and ingenuity. The team inside, along with those preparing to enter, faced a daunting task. They would need to navigate the cave's treacherous terrain, overcome its physical challenges, and, most importantly, keep hope alive in the face of overwhelming odds. What made matters worse was the extent of Emily's injuries. The trek would take days, and likelihood for survival was low. It'd be a miracle if she made it out alive. More than 200 volunteers, experienced cavers, and professionals from various agencies converged on the cave, united to ensure Emily's safe return. Coordinating a rescue in one of the nation's deepest caverns presented logistical nightmares. The cave's intricate network of passages, narrow and twisting with vast and vertical drops, posed impossible challenges. Rescuers had to plan meticulously. Every move had to be calculated, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death. At the heart of the operation were underground coordinators, seasoned experts who understood the cave's complexity. They mapped out a path that would minimize the risk to ensure Emily's safety. The rescue team rehearsed each step, from navigating narrow passages to ascending steep cliffs, all while bearing the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. One of the most daunting tasks was moving Emily through the cave's tightest confines. In places, the passages narrowed to a mere shoulder's width. Rescuers had to kneel and carefully pass Emily's stretcher hand to hand overhead. Each transfer was a testament to the team's coordination and a trust in one another. The team reached what seemed to be an impossible obstacle. With her legs splinted and strapped into the stretcher gurney, the passage was too narrow and too windy. Her heart beating out of her chest, in immense pain, she left the stretcher behind to squeeze through. The pain was excruciating. Then came the vertical challenge, a 185-foot subterranean cliff that required precision and strength to ascend. The team rigged a system of ropes and pulleys, transforming the cave into a temporary rescue shaft. With unwavering focus, they hauled Emily up inch by inch, against the backdrop of a cave's silent grandeur. Throughout the ordeal, Emily's injuries were getting worse. They didn't have much time, and her leg was badly injured. As the rescue operation stretched into the fourth day, the team faced exhaustion, both physical and emotional. They had all but given up hope. As the rescue operation entered its final hours, the cave's shadowy passages began to open to a glimmer of hope. Above ground, anticipation grew. The collective breath of the rescuers, family, and friends held tight, awaiting the moment when Emily would emerge. The team below could feel that they were close, but hope faded and terror set in when they turned the corner and looked up. The final ascent, a 75-foot pitch, an impossible vertical climb to the cave's entrance. What would they do? Dr. Steve Mossberg, who led the rescue mission, had an ingenious idea. They put together a pulley system to raise her to the surface. Here, the team's efforts converged, lifting Emily towards the night sky, where a half moon cast a gentle glow on the Guadalupe Mountains. Emerging from the cave, Emily was greeted with cheers of expression, relief, and joy from those who had waited tirelessly for her return. Accompanied by Dr. Stephen Mossberg, who had stayed by her side throughout the entire ordeal, and surrounded by well-wishers, Emily's first words were gratitude. The cost of the operation, both in terms of resources and emotional toll, was significant. Yet it underscored the priceless truth, the value of human life, and the lengths at which we're willing to go to preserve it. More than 200 individuals from various agencies, walks of life, had come together, each contributing their skills and strengths to the cause. As Emily was transported to the hospital, her journey was far from over. Yet the legacy of her rescue would endure. A narrative of courage, teamwork, and profound resilience of the human spirit. In the face of darkness, it was the light within each rescuer, each volunteer, each friend that illuminated the path to safety. Trapped underground for over 2 months. All hope lost. Hungry, tired, afraid. This was the fate of the 33 miners in the summer of 2010. As the devastating story unfolded, Chile captured the attention of the world. August 5th, 2010. Deep in the San Jose mine near Copiapo, 33 miners were trapped underground for over 2 months. Mining is already known as a tough and risky job. It has dangers like chemical exposure, high temperatures, and major injuries. But the situation in San Jose was even worse. The mine had a history of incidents. Sadly, the owners were more focused on making money than keeping the miners safe. Despite the dangers, the miners reported to work as usual. On August 5th, 33 of them went to work. They needed the money. They had families to take care of. Even though the conditions were tough, their resilience never waned. Little did they know what awaited them, or the horrors they would face. On that day, disaster struck, and the world watched as the drama of the trapped miners unfolded. Their lives were at risk. The San Jose mine, although not among the largest copper mines in Chile, had its own reputation. Chile is known for its copper production. The country earns billions of dollars from exports. This makes the demand for copper quite high. The San Jose mine stood out for paying higher wages than average. This wasn't out of generosity from the bosses. The mine was notorious for its dangerous conditions. To attract workers, the owners had to offer higher wages, making it seem like a good deal. Behind the scenes, the owners cut corners on safety measures to save costs. The San Esteban Mining Company operated the San Jose mine. Between 2004 and 2010, it faced fines 42 times for violating safety rules. This number would likely have been higher if there were more inspectors. There were only 3 inspectors for the entire region. Miners at San Jose had been voicing concerns about unsafe conditions. Prior to the disaster, 8 people had lost their lives due to poor safety standards. Those who worked there were even called kamikazes. It seemed inevitable that neglecting safety measures would lead to a tragedy eventually. No one knew that the day had arrived. On August 5th, 2010, mine supervisor Luis Urzua led his crew on a 12-hour shift. They were positioned 3 miles away from the mine entrance, in 2,300 feet or 700 meters deep. It seemed like any other day in the mine. Men were hard at work. The sound of drills echoed through the mine. The miners toiled for copper as sweat dripped down their bodies. The day started like any other for Luis Urzua and his crew at the San Jose mine. On August 5th, 2010, they were deep underground, working hard to extract copper. Suddenly, they felt intense vibrations followed by a deafening explosion. It was as if the whole mountain was collapsing on them. In reality, a massive block of stone had broken off, causing the collapse of the entire mine. The lack of proper supports in the mine walls only made matters worse. The miners couldn't see anything for a while. When the dust settled, the miners found themselves trapped, 300 feet below the surface, with little food and water. There was darkness and a feeling of doom. Despite the uncertainty, the miners held on to hope. They regrouped and searched for ventilation shafts, hoping for a way out. It seemed like a good idea to use the ventilation shaft as a possible escape route. This idea turned out to be futile, because the shaft lacked ladders. This was yet another safety oversight by the mine management. It couldn't get any worse. 2 days later, on August 7th, another collapse occurred. This time, it completely blocked access to the shaft. Now, the fate of the miners rested in the hands of the surface rescuers. Breaching through a stone block, weighing 770,000 tons, proved to be impossible. The rescuers held little hope that anyone inside had survived. Upon hearing the news, the president of Chile, Sebastián Piñera, did something unexpected. He cut short his trip and made the rescue of the miners the government's top priority. The Minister of Mining arrived at the scene. He entrusted the rescue mission to professionals from Codelco, the state-owned mining company. The government was determined to do everything possible to save the miners. The cost was a non-issue. The 33 lives trapped in the mine were more important. The first task for rescuers was to locate the miners. They began drilling exploratory boreholes. They then sent listening probes to detect any signs of life. At first, the search didn't find anything. Despite being in trouble, the mine owners did not care. They went ahead and gave the rescue teams old and wrong maps. Due to the second collapse, the rescue teams lost all hope. It would have been harder for the miners to survive. Even so, the rescue team kept going and didn't give up on finding them. The incident was gaining international recognition by this time. Families of the trapped men came to the mine. They united together, praying for a miracle. A miner's job is a lot like a soldier's. They both need to follow orders and rules to the letter. It was sheer luck that the accident happened when the shift supervisor, Luis Urzua, was in charge. Urzua was a great leader. After the accident, he gathered his team and figured out what to do. When they couldn't get out right away, he made sure they had everything they needed to stay alive for a long time. Urzua took immediate action by relocating the men from the shelter. They went into the tunnels with better ventilation. He mapped out the mine and created a plan. There were specific areas for sleeping, working, and even a makeshift sanitary facility. Establishing a strict set of rules was paramount, and Urzua emphasized compliance. He knew that things would get ugly if the men were left to their thoughts. He had an understanding of the gravity of their situation. He knew there would be a lengthy rescue timeline. As a result, he rationed their emergency food supply to minimal portions. Each worker received only 2 spoons of tuna and half a glass of milk every 48 hours. The ration may have been meager, but it was sufficient to sustain everyone. Yet, more crucial than combating hunger was addressing the workers' mental well-being. Urzua devised a strategy to keep them engaged by maintaining a 12-hour shift schedule. He utilized the lights from mining trucks to mimic sunlight. This enabled the men to maintain their regular daily routines. Nonetheless, life inside the mountain remained exceptionally challenging for the miners. Each miner endured a weight loss of approximately 17.5 to 20 pounds due to malnourishment. Many also suffered from eye and lung infections caused by the dust cloud that engulfed the collapsed mine. During one probe effort, the miners heard the drills near them. When the drill emerged at the surface, a note had been attached to it. The note said that all the 33 miners were alive and staying at the shelter. Once communication was restored with the outside world, life for the miners improved slightly. Initially, they received fresh water and calorie-enriched milk. Later, solid food was provided. However, miners were cautioned not to gain too much weight, as they needed to fit through the escape tunnel being prepared by the rescue team. As time went by, the number of deliveries to the miners increased. They received foldable beds, camping showers, video and music players, books, and games to keep themselves entertained. When the third borehole was drilled, enriched oxygen was pumped into the mine. However, the most challenging issue was the prolonged time the miners spent in a confined space. To address this, the Chilean government consulted NASA experts to help the miners cope with the problem. Can you imagine spending 24 hours per day in a hole thousands of feet below the surface? This was too much of a burden, even for miners accustomed to working in such conditions. The situation was made worse by the assessment of a rescue plan. It was determined that rescuers would need at least 4 months to reach them. Meanwhile, rescuers were making plans on how to extract the trapped miners. They devised 3 plans, A, B, and C, each involving different drills and drilling methods. Eventually, the Plan B drill team, using a Teal 130XD core drill, was the first to reach the miners. The team began drilling on September 5th, 1 month after the collapse. They drilled a 28-inch wide hole at an angle of 82 degrees. This way, they connected the surface with the workshop inside the mine. The hole was created in 3 stages to ease the pressure on the drill and reduce the risk of a new collapse. Throughout the entire operation, trapped miners worked in shifts. They helped to remove the debris left by the drilling operation. On October 9, 2010, the Plan B hole was completed. A specially designed capsule for extracting the miners had been produced. It was named Phoenix 2 and was brought to the site. It was painted in the colors of the Chilean national flag. The rescue operation commenced 3 days later, on October 12th. It took engineers some time to mount the capsule. The rescue operation was named San Lorenzo, after the miners' patron saint, St. Lawrence. It commenced on October 12th at 23:18 hours. The Phoenix 2 capsule descended a rescue worker, Manuel Gonzalez. He was to coordinate the operation from the mine. The first miner to ascend to the surface was Florencio Avalos. He was Urzua's deputy, chosen for his skill in case of any issues with the capsule. At IRL 11 hours on October 13th, he appeared on the surface after spending 69 days trapped in the mine. He was greeted with the sounds of the national anthem. He was happy to see the president of Chile and a crowd of miners' family members. These family members never gave up. They had spent weeks at the site, eagerly awaiting their loved ones. So great was this rescue that a tent city developed around it. There was a play area for children, a school, and a cafe. Police officers and soldiers were maintaining order and security in that area. The entire rescue operation, as well as the event itself, was broadcast worldwide. The last miner to be extracted, at 21:55, was Luis Urzua. The entire accident was described as a nightmare. Luckily, it slowly transformed into a dream filled with hope. Still, the aftermath of the Copiapó mining accident was far from rosy for most of the miners. After being rescued, miners were granted 6 months of health care. The oldest miners were given lifetime pensions. For some time after the accident, miners enjoyed the attention of the entire nation. Many of them traveled abroad to hold motivational lectures. Most of these were based on their traumatic experiences. After a while, the media frenzy ended and the attention faded away. The miners started to face the consequences of the trauma they suffered. A number of miners were unable to cope and eventually turned to alcohol and drug abuse. The owners of the San Jose mine, most responsible for the accident, got off relatively easy. They had to sell their business to cover the rescue costs. The rescue costs reached $20 million US. Unfortunately, they were relieved from all charges. This includes neglecting the safety of their employees. Copper production in Chile continued in the same manner as before the accident. The Copiapó mining incident was a terrifying experience that captured global attention. The miners' resilience and the dedication of rescue teams were commendable. This resulted in their eventual safe rescue. However, the aftermath revealed ongoing challenges for the miners. It highlighted the critical need for improved safety measures in mining operations. Imagine being a new father, filled with hope and joy, trapped upside down, deep inside a dark cave, hanging. Blood rushes to your head. You feel dizzy, disoriented, getting weaker by the second, struggling to stay conscious. The thought of never seeing your family again burned inside your mind. This is the agony that describes John Jones' last minutes alive inside the Nutty Putty Cave. The Nutty Putty tragedy is a heart-wrenching tale. It digs into the depths of human resilience and the fragility of life. In the remote Utah cave, exploration turned to horror. This is when the young man found himself trapped. He had no way out of the terrible place. What began as an adventure had turned into a disturbing scene. It captivated the world. Join me as we unravel the gripping story of survival and sacrifice. This is the enduring legacy of the Nutty Putty tragedy. For families, the holidays are a time for joy. These are the moments to create lasting memories. For the Jones family, this was the perfect time to explore the Nutty Putty Cave. Little did they know the tragic turn their outing would take, the unimaginable loss they would experience. John Jones joined his loved ones in venturing into the depths of the Nutty Putty Cave. It is nestled in the Utah desert near Salt Lake City. John hadn't explored this particular cave before. He had past caving experience across various Utah caves. Most of these experiences were with his brother. He was a seasoned caver. John's life had taken on a new dimension of responsibility. He was married and had a child. He was also pursuing his medical degree at the University of Virginia. This was a commitment that filled his days with a demanding schedule. Despite his busy routine, the Thanksgiving break provided a much-needed opportunity. It allowed him to reconnect with his family and unwind. The family was eager to make the most of their time together. They opted for a day of outdoor adventure. They settled on Nutty Putty Cave as their destination. It had been categorized as a beginner's cave by many. It promised a day of exploration and bonding amidst the holiday season. The Nutty Putty Cave had fascinating tunnels. These areas appealed to explorers at all levels. On such a spot was the Maze Room. It was a labyrinth. The layout had tunnels weaving around boulders. Then there were steep cliffs. The slide offered a thrilling experience. The entire room sloped down at a 45-degree angle. It had a guiding rope to aid adventurers on their journey. Most of the cave system was well mapped and traversable. However, there were renowned sections that posed greater challenges. The birth canal and the aorta crawl stood out. They were particularly daunting passages. It required a skill level and courage beyond what most cavers possessed. The narrow and confining spaces tested the limits of most experienced cavers. It added an element of intrigue and exploration to the Nutty Putty Cave. Despite the well-known challenges of the Nutty Putty Cave, people still encountered difficulties, mostly when navigating through tight squeezes. This led to a period of closure as the cavers became wedged in these narrow passages. The cave had recently reopened to the public. However, the risks remained. Some adventurers found themselves unable to proceed past certain points, their shoulders and hips refusing to fit through the constricting spaces. This was regardless of their efforts to maneuver against the rock. Once lodged in the tight spots, they were immobilized. They required urgent assistance to carefully extract themselves backwards. These rescues led to the implementation of the new entry protocol. Each group consists of at least 2 experienced cavers. Josh had secured a permit for the group. It was scheduled for the day before Thanksgiving, on November 24th, 2009. John's wife, Emily, was pregnant at the time. She opted to remain at home with their 1-year-old daughter, Lizzie. The group of 11 close relatives and friends went off to explore the caves. After looking through the main opening sections of the cave for a time, John, his brother, and the 2 friends went off to search for challenging tunnels. They used the map to get the birth canal's location. The passage was renowned for its length and tightness at the end of the narrow squeeze. Beyond the narrowest point of the birth canal laid a small room. Here one could stand upright and turn around. It offered a small break from the tight confines. The group was unaware of the anxiety-inducing nature of this passage. They proceeded to spread out in search of the tunnel. John and Josh opted for the passage on the left. This led them through the small tunnel stretching about 15 feet long. Along the way, the terrain had varying elevations and turns. The rocky outcroppings and the tight squeezes made the adventure harder. Navigating through these obstacles required bending their bodies in different directions. They had to twist their bodies to move forward. The challenge extended far beyond muscling one's way through the tight crevice. The section earned the nickname the Corkscrew, for good reason. Those who traversed it successfully were small and flexible. They employed every ounce of their skill necessary to navigate through the panic-inducing contortions. And this was with painstaking slowness. After the corkscrew, the passage ascended for another 5 feet. It then turned downward over a rock ledge, marked by a sharp 90-degree turn bend to the left. Cavers use this narrow area to pivot and retrace their steps. However, this spot held a grim history. In 2004, a 16-year-old, Brock Clark, found himself stuck in the corkscrew. He was 5'7", weighing about 140 pounds. His attempt to turn around led to a grueling 14-hour rescue operation. John now found himself in the exact position where Brock was trapped. He attempted the same maneuver that led to Brock's entrapment. John's stature was 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. He knew that tunneling through the new section was impossible. He was confined within a space that was 12 inches in height. He had insufficient lateral room to maneuver his body. The only option was to move forward. He approached the ledge and squeezed himself over the top. Though the passage ahead appeared tight, John remained resolute. He was determined to press on. He took a deep breath, he sucked in his stomach, and pushed forward. He leveraged the rocks ahead to propel himself forward. Moving first at a downward angle, John spied what seemed to be an opening ahead. This was a potential turnaround point. Unbeknownst to him, no one had ever crossed over this ledge before. He was venturing into uncharted territory. Despite the uncomfortable position, John maintained his composure. His confidence was fueled by the belief that an escape route lay ahead. John believed that he was navigating through a section of the birth canal. This was the notorious spot where many cavers had felt trapped. Luckily, they emerged unscathed on the other side. As he passed through the very tight zone, he found himself sliding downward in the tunnel. This was almost in a handstand position. He struggled to maintain his balance. He had to figure out how to maneuver backward. He was unable to turn around and was now upside down. Gravity exerted its pull against his 200-pound frame. His strength waned as he hung on to the fading hope of escape. Calling out to his brother Josh, John instructed him not to follow but to retreat. Together they weighed their options. They decided to press forward and attempt to turn around. John's body was collapsing onto his shoulders and head. He knew he had to act. He spotted a hole in the floor illuminated by a headlamp. He felt a glimmer of hope, envisioning that there was a large space beyond. He was optimistic that they would laugh about this later. John made the decision to make a slight turn and head toward the hole. Exactly how John found himself in this tight spot remains unknown. Some suggest he may have slipped, hit his head, and got wedged in the narrow space. Others believe he peered into the hole and misjudged its depth. He mistook it for an opening rather than a dead end. Regardless of the cause, John found himself wedged in a small opening. This was the bottom of the tunnel. Quite narrow, 18 by 10 inches, not larger than the screen of a laptop computer. He was almost completely upside down at a 70-degree angle. He spent a lot of time pushing himself back upward. John's situation escalated as his attempts to free himself failed. He became wedged further into the passage. He was completely upside down with his arms pinned. Realizing that they needed help, Josh rushed out of the cave to call for assistance. 3 hours later, the first rescuer, Susie Matola, arrived on the scene. Despite her efforts, she was unable to extract him. Various rescue plans were discussed. This included using a pulley system to hoist John out legs first. This turned out to be complicated. Drilling into the rock to create more space was challenging and time-consuming. Meanwhile, concerns grew of John's condition. Being upside down can lead to organ failure within 10 hours. This is due to the blood pooling in their brain and lungs. The rescue team also faced logistical and time challenges. The situation became dire. The team had to act quickly to extract John and save his life. John's deteriorating condition became terrifying. His heart struggled to pump blood. He was now exposed to the risk of cardiac arrest. Susie Matola noticed fluid pooling in his lungs. The situation was quickly deteriorating. Immediate extraction was the primary goal. Several attempts were made using ropes and pulleys. However, John's position in the unstable cave structure made things difficult. The rescuers kept calm and ensured that he maintained communication with Emily. Unfortunately, John's condition worsened. After several attempts, disaster struck. A piece of the rescue system failed, causing John to slide back into the crevice. The lead rescuer also sustained injuries in the process. The team was now exhausted and desperate. Efforts to free John also included drilling into the rock. Nothing could stop John's condition from deteriorating further. In a heartbreaking turn, John went into cardiac arrest. Emily kept encouraging him. Sadly, rescue efforts were futile. Rescuers suspected the worst. A brave paramedic confirmed what everybody dreaded to hear. John had breathed his last breath. This marked the tragic end to the rescue mission. On Wednesday, November 25th at 11:56, John was pronounced dead. The rescue teams had worked for 24 hours straight, attempting to extract him. In a sad ending, they were unable to free John from the upside-down position in the cave. John survived an extraordinary 27 hours in this inverted state, 3 times longer than expected. The 6 rescue personnel who reached out to John showed true heroism. They entered a hazardous, unmapped portion of the cave to aid in the rescue. They faced numerous risks, yet they remained selfless, composed, and unwavering. They were committed to the impossible task. It was clear that recovering John's body was impossible. He was left to rest in the depths of the Nutty Putty Cave. The entire cave system was sealed off with concrete and never to be explored again. A plaque was placed in his memory. It commemorated John's life. It also highlights the tragic events that unfolded. This was a day supposed to end with laughter and celebration. Instead, it became one of devastation and tragedy. The Nutty Putty Cave has since been closed due to the tragedy. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.